welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 451, and today's date is August 26, 2014. And the title of this episode is Central Bankers Sending in Drones to Map Out Targets in Syria. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we're having reports that Argentina is having a huge amount of problems because, as we know, they've defaulted on their bonds, and right now Argentina peso is plummeting to new record lows, and Bank of America is out there warning of a looming economic crisis. Now, in all of this, they decided that, and I'm saying they, Argentina, is saying that they're going to revoke Bank of New York Mellon's authorization to operate. Argentina said on Tuesday it has stripped Bank of New York Mellon's authorization to operate in South America country, its latest move against the financial institution which obeyed a U.S. court ruling that tipped it into default. The central bank said it took the measures because the U.S. bank failed to fulfill technical requirements to operate in the country. So they're retaliating against the United States banks. And we can see right now Argentina is also making additional deals with China. They're pumping in billions of dollars into their infrastructure, and they're creating this new railway system, and they're trying to get into the BRICS nations and join that organization. So we're starting to see they're starting to separate themselves from the U.S., and it's starting to look like they don't really care that much about the default, their debt, because they're starting to move in a totally different direction at this point. Now, here in the United States, they have the illusion going very, very strong. Everyone's believing that we're in this incredible recovery, that everything is fine. And right now, the government confidence survey spiked to a 7-year high. And they're reporting that it printed at about 92.4. This is the highest since October 2007. Now, we know what happened in October of 2008, and going forward, everything collapsed. We had this huge stock market crash. Businesses went out of business. People were unemployed, and we've never recovered, and all we've had was stimulus, stimulus, stimulus to keep everything going. And we understand the government is continually manipulating all the calculations like unemployment, inflation, GDP to keep the illusion alive that we are completely in a recovery. But when you look at the government's Conference Board Consumer Confidence and the UMich Consumer Confidence, they are heading in two different directions. The government one is heading straight up. The UMich is heading straight down. So they don't even, they're completely on opposite ends of the world right now, and we see why. But let's take a look at what's really going on in the economy. Now, we understand that consumer spending is way down. Retailers are suffering, stores are closing, and a lot of the companies now are reporting that sales are not as strong as the government would like you to believe. It has nothing to do with the weather. We are out of the winter of the first quarter. We went through spring, we're in summer, we're heading into fall, and right now another store, and everyone pretty much probably knows it, Best Buy, they have missed their estimates, and their sales are continuing to decline in many of the consumer electronic categories. And they're saying that it's getting harder and harder to keep these stores open. Sales of consumer electronics such as TVs and desktops and notebook computers fell 2.5% industry-wide in the quarter. The company also said it expected continued softness in mobile phone sales ahead of the release of new models. Same-store sales fell by 2.7%. The U.S. same-store sales slipping 2%. So we're seeing that Best Buy is having a very tough time because the American people, again, do not have the discretionary, disposable income to go out and say, let me get that new TV, let me get that new phone. They're hoarding their money, making sure they have enough for food, rent, fuel to get to wherever they have to get to, and most likely clothing. That's about it right now. So these unemployment numbers they're coming out with, that we're at 6.2%, is completely off. It's manipulated. It's created to make it seem like we're in this recovery, and we know the unemployment is very close to 30%. Some calculations put it at 37%, and we can see right now we are nowhere near any type of recovery. Now, CNN is out there. This is a Turner Network part of the company here. They're saying they're going to be laying off 13,000 workers. So we can see this is hitting every single company, and they're starting to realize that listen, we're not making profits anymore. Of course, with CNN, their ratings are down, and we're seeing many companies are starting to say, you know what, profits aren't coming in. We're going to have to let people go. And we've seen, and I mentioned this before, that a lot of companies have already submitted their paperwork for layoffs coming up this fall, and we're going to see a lot more companies push out thousands upon thousands of people being laid off. Now, Lonman International is laying off about 5,700 jobs. Fairchild Semiconductor closing facilities in Utah and Malaysia. They're going to be eliminating about 1,350 jobs. Now, here in the United States, we are seeing the manipulation of data continuing. We see they continually put their hands, when I say they, the U.S. government, central bankers, put their hands into pretty much everything, trying to prop things up. And right now, we're seeing that durable goods they're saying that, wow, what incredible, it's above expectations, it's record breaking. And they're saying that it hit 22.6 gain, smashing the 8.0% expectation. Now, we have to really look at what happened here. And we see that the largest factor was the civilian aircraft orders. Now, this is a one-off, non-repeatable factor. So if we remove the aircraft purchases, what do we see? Well, it collapsed, the durable goods collapsed from a 3% gain to a 0.8% drop. This biggest drop in 2014, this is the biggest drop in 2014, missing expectations by the most in 8 months. Boeing orders from UK Airshow led to non-def aircraft orders increased 318%. Transportation equipment orders in July were $133 billion, driven by non-defense aircraft parts new orders at $70.3 billion. Now, of course, this won't happen again because they're not going to continually order these aircraft parts, so we're going to see durable goods completely fall apart and shrink. Now, again, in real estate, we are seeing more bad news. We're heading into that territory where home prices are falling. Now, Case-Shiller has come out and they're saying we see a complete slowdown in home prices, and in about 20 of the places where we track, the cities where we track, we're seeing a decline in prices, and I am seeing the same thing. And I've said this many times before, they are seeing a complete slowdown, and we're heading out of the summer, we're heading into the fall. Things are going to start to speed up and collapse. Now, one of the biggest areas is San Francisco, and I mentioned this before. They were up by 25.7% year-over-year increase as of last September. Right now, they are down to 12.9%, half. So you can see home prices are starting to really slow. In May, they were at 15.6%, and they dropped to 12.9%. So you can see the trend is heading down. Prices are falling. Sales are falling. We're heading to that territory where real estate is imploding on itself. Now, imagine if they decided to raise interest rates. This would pretty much get everyone out of the market. Now, why is San Francisco so important? Because the only 3 previous times when there was such a sharp contraction in the pace of San Fran home price appreciation, either the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble, or the European sovereign debt bubble had just burst. And here we are again in the same area. This is the 4th bubble, and we're tracking San Francisco, and it seems like we're heading in the same direction, and that is a big pop. Now, in Detroit, we understand they're having a huge amount of trouble. The city is bankrupt. People cannot pay for their water. There was a moratorium where people were allowed to keep their water on, where they had to catch up on their payments, but it looks like this ends I think it was yesterday, and now it seems that about 170,000 customers were delinquent, and a lot of people are going to have their water shut off right now. And of course, where is the federal government? Where are they? Of course, they're sending billions of dollars to many other countries, not helping the people of Detroit, not helping the people of the U.S. They're sending think about this, they're sending billions of dollars for all the illegals to come over, giving them underwear, giving them food, giving them work permits, putting them on a bus, sending them to different cities, giving them money to survive. And this is costing billions upon billions of dollars. They're even paying for um, the uh, the military to guard them inside military bases. So we can see right now all this money is not going to the everyday American. This money is going everywhere else except here. Now, there's some information out there about Ferguson. Now, we understand that there were agent provocateurs in Ferguson trying to really ramp up the rioting, have the military police test their equipment and everything like that. But what's interesting right now, evidence has been uncovered showing Eric Holder contributed funds to Ferguson's gang population as incentive to loot and spread civil unrest in the area. These angry government-sponsored terrorists have systematically infiltrated peaceful protests with the intention of escalating the situation and inciting riots. A local gang leader came forward last week after being arrested during a night of mass looting. The unnamed criminal is using his information to bargain for a reduced sentence. Allegedly, Holder's goal was to test militarized police response in a martial law scenario. Judge Reinhardt of the 22nd Circuit Court in St. Louis is presiding over the case and has reviewed the materials, and they say that it looks convincing right now. So we're going to have to follow this and see where this goes. Now, it looks like the Fed is now creating a new database to spy on the American people. The federal government is spending nearly about $1 million to create an online database that will track misinformation and hate speech on Twitter. The National Science Foundation is financing the creation of a web service that will monitor suspicious speech. Now, what is suspicious speech? I mean, this is ridiculous because we know what it's for. They're talking about false and misleading ideas with a major focus on political activity online. Pretty much all those people who are talking negatively about the government, who don't agree with the government views, these are the people they're spying on. So this database is called Truthy, created by research at Indiana University. It's designed to detect political smears, astroturfing, misinformation, and other social pollution. The government-funded research hope that public will use their tool in the future to report on other Twitter users. Basically, they want the public to pretty much tattle on other people who are talking about the government in a not so friendly way, like, oh, we don't believe that Russia shot down MH17. We believe the United States and Kiev were involved in this shooting down the MH17. This would be flagged. So this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to have the people click on the Truthy button on Twitter, and it will pretty much notify the authorities, and you might actually get a knock on the door. Okay, now out in California, as we know, they were pretty much passing a bill for a kill switch on iPhones, and it looks like this bill has become law. So now every single iPhone, Android phone, smartphone will need to have this kill switch. And we have to remember the U.S. government does have a bill floating around in Congress right now to do the same exact thing in the entire country. And we know why they want this done, because they don't want people taking pictures, calling, doing things to pretty much upset their false flag event inside the country, and they want to stop it. And all they need to do is throw a switch. It's stopped. Everything is shut down. You can't even take a picture. You can't even turn on your phone. And of course, they're saying that this is used for criminal entities who steal smartphones, because it's such an epidemic that they need something in place, which is absolutely ridiculous. Put a passcode on your phone. Do whatever you need to do. If a criminal really wants your phone, they have the means to reset it, even if there is a kill switch in there. They're going to figure out how to bypass it, reset the phone, reinstall everything, so it's pretty much meaningless at this point. Now, it looks like France is out there, and they have fulfilled their obligations under the Mistral deal with Russia. They are going to deliver the 2 ships to Russia, and that looks great. Now, Putin is out there meeting Poroshenko down in Minsk, and he's saying if Ukraine decided to switch over to EU trade, which they're going to do, they're looking to do, they're saying that that it will cost Ukraine about 165 billion euros over the next 10 years to do this. Now, of course, we know Ukraine is collapsing. They're fully into a lot of debt that the IMF, World Bank, United States have given them. They can't even pay this back. Currency is collapsing. Gas is shut off. People are rioting. They don't want to be drafted into the anti-terrorism war. They have a civil war going on, and the whole thing's falling apart. And Putin is out there saying Russia will be forced to cancel all preferential trade agreements for Ukraine's imports and switch to a standard regime when it ratifies its EU Trade Association Agreement in September, in full accordance with the terms of agreement with the CIS Trade Zone, Free Trade Zone, and WTO standards. We will be forced to cancel preferential imports from Ukraine. And this is coming from Putin. That's what he said. So we can see right now Ukraine is going to be digging a deeper and deeper hole. Now, it looks like Ukraine is out there reporting, and it's on corporate news, that they've captured 10 servicemen who crossed over the border in Ukraine. Now, of course, Russia is out there saying this was a patrol that was patrolling the area, and by accident they went over the border. And if you actually take a look at the border, you can see there are no fences. It's just fields, and if you're walking along it, you can accidentally move into a different country. Actually, I put videos up on the X22Report.com and pictures to show you how actually people come and meet each other. And what the news story didn't report in the corporate media is that there were about 500 Ukrainian troops that cross over with weapons and everything like that, and Russia returns them to the other side. The 10 people that were captured had passports on them. They had their Russian uniforms on them. They put their hands up. They surrendered. They knew they made a mistake. They're very young, and this is no way an invasion whatsoever. Because first of all, if Putin was going to do something covert, he's not going to give them passports, put them in Russian fatigues, and have them walk over the border in broad daylight to be spotted. He's going to use unmarked uniforms. He's going to have no identification on these people whatsoever, and it would be through the cover of night in a position in an area that no one can see. But we're not seeing this actually happen. And of course, Ukraine, the corporate media, they are playing this up big time. Now, it looks like the rebels inside Ukraine have encircled about 1,000 of Kiev's troops, and pretty much they've confiscated about 50 tanks, 200 armored vehicles, and 50 artillery rocket systems, and they're trapped in an area. They have them surrounded, and we can see right now that Ukraine is having a very tough time with the southeastern people. The southeastern people are fighting back, and the Ukrainian military just does not have the heart to follow through on this. And the paid mercenaries, the amount that are there, are not enough to fight against the southeastern people, and it seems like they're having a very difficult time. And the new people they want to bring into the anti-terrorism forces are saying, absolutely not, we are not fighting in this war. Now, it looks like there were 2 NATO vessels that will arrive in the Black Sea on September 3rd, the USS Ross Destroyer and the France frigate, their intelligence ship, are both going into the Black Sea. And right now there's only one French intelligence vessel there, the USS Vela Gulf cruiser, pretty much left on August 7th, and it was restationed someplace else. So it looks like they're bringing ships back into the Black Sea. And of course, as we know, under the convention, they can only stay in there for 21 days because they are a non-state. And if you're a non-state, you cannot stay in the Black Sea. You have to leave after 21 days. Now, yesterday I talked about this hypersonic weapon that the U.S. was testing, and it seems like they tested it yesterday from the Kodiak Islands in Alaska, and about 4 seconds after it took off, it exploded. It looks like there were some developmental problems, and it malfunctioned, and it just exploded. And it looks like witnesses said they saw the rocket lift off, and then it exploded. So it looks like they're going back to the drawing board. And you have to remember, China and Russia already developed these missiles. They've already tested them. And here we are, the United States central bankers, they're testing it for the first time, and they can't even get liftoff. And we're having many, many problems trying to get the military assets working here. And we see this a lot with the F-35 and many other military assets. And this is not a good sign, because what we're looking at is that these United States central bankers are trying to provoke war all across the world, and the military assets they think they have that are so great are really not working at this point. And this poses a big, big problem. Now, out in Iraq, it looks like British special forces have landed in Iraq to fight ISIS along with the United States. Since there are no boots on the ground, we don't have to worry that anything will happen. But of course, as we know, there's about 1,500 U.S. troops, advisors, in Iraq right now. England has sent their troops into the area, and we can see this is a buildup, and they're continually building up the amount of boots on the ground in Iraq. Now, we hear a lot of rhetoric out there saying that, Syria and the United States are going to work together. They have one goal. And we can see right now, no. What the Syria is saying is, listen, we will work with any nation that will help fight this terrorism. All you need to do is ask us. We can set up some parameters. We have to be abiding by international law, but you just can't come in here and bomb. Now, of course, the U.S. is out there saying, well, we're ruling out any coordination with Syria. We're not going to ask them permission. We're going to send drones in. We're going to do whatever we have to do, and there is no cooperation with Syria whatsoever. Now, Syria keeps putting it out there, saying if the United States is really against terrorism, they would ask Syria to help out and fight terrorism. But we're not seeing that happen. And Russia is continually reminding the United States, do not bomb inside Syria. So as we know, the United States central bankers have sent drones in. They're flying it around inside Syria. Syria has not given them any type of permission. There are witnesses out there saying, yes, they've seen drones. They are mapping out targets right now and preparing for a strike later on. Now, how will they get in there to strike? Well, right now, it seems like the White House says Obama could attack ISIS in Syria regardless of borders and without the approval of Congress. Now, the question is, what is he going to use to do this? Now, it seems like the whole video of James Foley is falling apart. We're seeing that the skin color of James Foley does not match the skin color of the dummy or whatever it is laying on the ground. James Foley's skin color was much more medium. This is pure white, the skin on the body that's laying on the ground. The knife that's on the ground in the video does not match the knife that's the person in black is holding. So a lot of this is starting to fall apart. But what's very interesting, where the United States central bankers, they're coming out there saying this is terrible, the beheading, they're playing it up, they're pretending that it's real. And right now, they had a memorial mass for James Foley, and no White House representatives were present at the memorial, which I find very interesting, because they're the ones who are making a big deal that this is real, that he was killed, this is disgusting, we have to get the Islamic State, they're getting ready to attack America. But the Obama administration sent absolutely no one for James Foley. So are they showing us that this isn't real, and they know it's not real, and this is why no one really attended? Now, it looks like there is a British expert who worked on the video, and from everything that he can see, he is saying that this was definitely filmed in Syria. And as we know, they've already identified the man in black, and we can see right now that the United States is preparing to do something in Syria. General Dempsey is out there saying that once he determines the Islamic State militants in Iraq have become a direct threat to the U.S. homeland, he will recommend the U.S. military move directly against the group in Syria. Dempsey also told reporters traveling with him that he believes that the key allies in the region, including Jordan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, will join the U.S. in quashing the Islamic State group. Well, yes, they will join, but not to hit Islamic State. They will join to hit Syria. Now, what does he mean by if there is a direct threat? Does he mean some type of downing of a military plane, an explosion here in the United States? Is that the way we're getting into Syria? Because it's starting to seem like they're pushing this agenda, letting things leak out a little bit, letting us know, yet yes, if something does happen, we will be heading into Syria. Now, Lieutenant General McGurney warns that we may have not seen the last of Flight MH370. The fact is, we may even see a 9/11-14 MH370 resurface again. We should be prepared for anything. We should go to DEFCON 1, which is our highest state of readiness, and be prepared as we lead up to 9/11. Now, the question is, does he know something that we don't? Does he realize that, yes, this plane is being stored someplace else that has a very long range? It's the same exact plane. The only difference is it has a longer range than the one that disappeared. Are they going to repaint it, and all of a sudden we're going to see this plane come into the United States? There will be corporate media all over the place, reports saying we found the MH370. The Islamic State is piloting it. They're ready to hit something or explode a biological, chemical, or dirty nuke over a city. So we can see they are definitely getting ready and preparing. Now, the Islamic State is saying they have more hostages, and they have a female American hostage who they're asking for $6.6 million ransom for her, and she's a 26-year-old humanitarian worker which was kidnapped last year in Syria. Now, the question is, the Islamic State is making about $3 million per day on the black market selling oil from Syria and Iraq. And they're asking for $6.6 million. What is the purpose of asking for this money? It makes no sense whatsoever why they would ask for money. So let's put this entire thing together, the entire Syrian story. So let's see. To prop up the U.S. dollar, the central bankers, U.S. government, decided to create a paid mercenary army to wage war for over 3 years to remove Assad. The U.S., with other nations, staged the chemical weapons false flag event to bomb Syria and remove Assad, which was de-escalated by Russia. During the Geneva II talks, there was only one agenda. Assad will need to be stepped down. The talks fell apart because Assad did not cooperate with the United States. The U.S. forced out the Syrian government officials and replaced them with the Syrian opposition forces. The central bankers' U.S. government trained the paid mercenaries army, which consisted of al-Qaeda and ISIS. As the war waged on, the U.S. and the paid mercenaries were losing ground in Syria, so the central bankers' U.S. government needed to come up with a new plan. Behind closed doors, Congress decides to send manpads and anti-tank weapons to the secret bases in Jordan where ISIS and al-Qaeda were training. The night before Congress goes on vacation, a person with a code name Caesar is introduced and shows Congress pictures of tortured people, which implicates Assad of committing war crimes. ISIS then swarms down into Iraq. With this newly funded and much stronger group, they decided to call Iraq and Syria a caliphate. The U.S. uses the cover story of humanitarian aid for the Yazidis and starts bombing around Erbil, which is 100 miles away, to protect the U.S. corporation oil hub. The FAA then declares a no-fly zone in Syria. Then we have the fake beheading of James Foley. This was used to get the people outraged and angry to get ISIS. As the video is analyzed by experts, it seems there are many inconsistencies, and the video is starting to look like a hoax. Using advanced technology, the UK and US have determined that it was filmed in Syria. The man in black is a rapper who is a citizen of the UK. Now, there are other hostages in Syria, and the Islamic State demands $6.6 million ransom for female American hostage, even though ISIS is making $3 million per day selling oil on the black market. Syria says it will cooperate with any nation but needs to be asked, and then reminds the U.S. it is not allowed to bomb Syria because it is a sovereign nation, and then Russia reminds the U.S. of the same exact thing. Obama administration rules out any coordination with Syria. Then the Obama administration decides to send in drones and surveillance assets into Syria without the permission of Syria. Finally, the White House says Obama could attack ISIS in Syria regardless of borders and without approval from Congress. And there you have it. That is pretty much the entire story of what has been happening in Syria. And when you look at this, you can see that they are prepping for something very big. Now, there are two scenarios here that could happen during this Syrian crisis. After the removal of the Islamic State from their northeastern Syria, the U.S. and its coalition might be pressured to finish the job one way or another. The first scenario, If the Islamic State is somehow destroyed and no longer a threat, then the U.S. may want to seize the strategic initiative and make a drive towards Damascus to finally overthrow the government. After all, they would already be on the offensive and actively engaged in the war zone as it is, and Damascus is definitely within the striking range of U.S. aircraft or drones already bombing Syria. The second scenario: push the Islamic State towards Damascus by using airstrikes in the same manner as a shepherd uses a staff to herd sheep. This accomplishes two important goals. First, it pushes the Islamic State all the way through the country and towards the capital, sowing destruction in its wake. And secondly, it provides the U.S. and its proxy allies with the justification for continuing their campaign all the way to the capital and de facto carrying out regime change under an anti-terror guise. The objective can be sped up or publicly justified if Syria defends its airspace and fires on American jets or drones. Since the U.S. is on an anti-terrorism mission and Syria fires upon the U.S., Syria will then be painted as a terrorist supporting the state. There is already false information in the Western media that Syria cooperates with the Islamic State, and the entire government will then be officially targeted for elimination. So we can see right now this whole entire thing that they've built up, they are still doing the same thing. Their goal is to get into Syria and remove Assad. And as we can see from all the evidence, from all the indicators, they are pursuing this plan. Now the problem is, how are they going to justify going into Syria? Will the Islamic State shoot down a warplane with their manpads? And how will Obama say, okay, we need to go into Syria because Syria is a sovereign nation and there's already warnings not to go in there? Or will there be a special event here in the United States bringing us to war into Syria, going full steam ahead? Now, all of this, when we're looking at it, does show us that they don't really care, because their goal and their plan is to get into Syria and remove Assad. And they believe that once they do this, everything will be fine. And then eventually they'll go into Iran and do the same exact thing. And they do believe that they'll prop up the dollar, keep the system going, and then move into the other Middle Eastern countries, because those tribes are rising up and take over the entire Middle East and start separating it into different regions: Shiite, Sunni, Kurds. And this is their entire plan. They'll have a monopoly on all the oil. They'll keep the dollar propped up, and they believe they can do this. Now, of course, we have other problems in this. Russia and China are on the other side. They're not going to sit back and just say, go ahead, invade these countries, invade Iran, kick out the government, replace it with the puppet regime. We're allowing you to do this. You know this is not going to happen. You know they're going to get involved, and we will start World War III. And of course, they don't really care about this, because either way, they can cover up the collapse. They can say that another country caused it. We're in war now. Everyone has to go into wartime mode. You have to send your children, your cousins, your friends, your relatives all into war to protect the central banking system. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.